It was a verbal, it was not written, and all. If Mr. Edelman said, well, I never quite agreed to that, he agreed in concept to it. So perhaps if I prefer that be struck, actually, that was discussed with Mr. Edelman, 40 feet in the back. If you look down, we have it going to Stanley Hills in the light green hatch. It is 8 feet, and the next section, that orange portion, is Marywood Drive. Marywood Drive is a dirt street, a paper street. It's owned by the city of Los Angeles. We have agreed we'll pay for the vacation of Marywood. We would give, it's 20 feet on a vacation. Half goes to one owner, half goes to the other owner. We'll give our 10 feet, we'll grant it to the Conservancy easement. That would give the Conservancy a minimum of 18 feet. 8 feet on our property, 10 feet vacation. We're at 18. We'll even go further. We have an agreement with the adjacent property owner where he would support the vacation. So it would be a minimum of 8 feet, 18 if we get the vacation, 28 if we get Mr. Tucci, the adjacent property owner, we have a written agreement with. And the last page is a close-up of that, the connection to Stanley Hills Drive. In sum, we're getting down, we have 1 minute left. My client never volunteered this condition. Frankly, nobody would. We've offered different conditions, different corridor locations. My client did some time ago 5 locations. We offer more tonight. Every corridor location has to respect the 3-lot approval. That was the intent of the city. 3 lots. Here's the site plan. That is, somebody said the tail wagging the dog. The dog, if you will, is the 3-lot approval. The tail is the corridor. Mr.
I got 20 seconds. I just want to say one thing.
Please identify yourself.
Oh, sorry. My name is Yossi Attia. I'm the owner of the property. I negotiated with Mr. Gushan, with the previous city councilman and the city councilman. This used to be 8 lots. With the discussion with the neighbor, we moved it to 3 lots. Also with discussion with the neighbor, we staggered the houses in a way that that's the only way they can fit. You can't move them. If you look at those plans, they're really close to each other in a way, and you can't move them. So we did everything in cooperation with them. We even paid Mr. Gushan fees to serve him here. This isn't the spirit of cooperation with the neighbor. Everything that they asked, literally everything, we said yes. Everything that Mr. Edelman asked without going to our living room, we said yes. And we show Ms. Wyatt 5 options, and we even give them 1 more option. And if you guys want to see the pictures, it's speaking better than 1,000 words. Where do they want the animal to come? And if they come on Stanley Hills, everybody, including the neighbors behind me, have an 8-foot fence in front of this property, from Wyndham on the top all the way down to Laurel Canyon. So we offer for the animal to come to a street that's belongs to the city. The same street that Stanley Hills, it also belongs to the city. And what is the difference between Stanley Hills to Marywood? When if you look at the picture, it's 71 foot is the distance from here to the end of this room. We're offering the animals to come over. Thank you very much. Sorry for
Mr. Abershon.
Yes, sir.
Most important question. The handout that you just gave us with additional alternatives and proposals.
Yes, sir.
Was this circulated to Mr. Glushan as well as Ms. Wyatt?
No, it was not. We've been scrambling. We showed one of them to Mr. Edelman late last week in my office. It has not been circulated.
Mr. Abershon, this is just my general thought and comments. Obviously, this is a matter that has a lot of interest from a lot of different aspects. Community members, you have a Conservancy involved, you have a council person involved, and you also have planning department as well as a property owner. I'm always of the position that if there's alternative proposals that can be worked on and discussed with all the parties, I think it's always very helpful, especially when you have so much difference of opinions and concerns from various parties. Having said that, do you have extra copies of your proposals?
We did, Commissioner Kim.
If you can, could you provide one to Ms. Wyatt? Mr. Glushan, do you have the alternative proposals? And also, I believe there's somebody here from the Conservancy.
Commissioner Kim, if I may quickly. I've known Mr. Glushan, we've known each other for some time. I've reached out to Mr. Glushan, we've had phone calls. We've not been able to, I think where you're going, if I may, is to try to work it out.
And that's definitely what I'm looking for.
Okay. We've tried. I talked to, again, I met with Mr. Edelman last week. We're always ready, and thought we had an agreement pending, final documentation. Yes, we even went over conditions regarding lighting. I was taking notes in my office when Mr. Edelman was telling me about lighting, no fencing in the easement area, no structures. Yes, Paul, okay. So we took it to a second level, if you will.
When was the last discussion that you had with the Conservancy as far as the alternative proposals that you provided to us?
He was in my office.
A week and a half ago.
No, it was shorter than that. Last week he was in my office one day last week.
Thank you very much.
As Commissioner Acevedo, I too, Commissioner Kim, I think I see a lot of proposals before us, and it always pains me to see people receive these proposals for the first time during these meetings of different parties. I understand that there's been a lot of proposals back and forth, and it's quite common to kind of get lost in the paper shuffle. I see a lot of speaker cards before us. There's lots of information that I think even the planning department is receiving for the first time. I think it would be worth giving everyone an opportunity, a final opportunity, a true final opportunity, and a good faith effort to try to find a way to find one of these proposals, or at least minimize the number of proposals, so that our body can actually look at these knowing full well that everyone's had an opportunity to vet them through.
In conjunction with what President Acevedo had said, looking through the proposals, I'm always of interest when there's alternative plans that's being proposed. If the parties get together, evaluate it, discuss it, provide comments to it, and if you're telling me that it's a week and a half ago that you had an opportunity to talk to the Conservancy in regards to this, I don't think that there was adequate time to go over each individual proposal that's currently being presented to us today. In addition to that, and more importantly, there's a lot of people from the community out here that wants to speak on this matter, and definitely we will be taking public comment in regards to that. Another question that I had, and it probably goes more towards, I believe, the Bureau of Engineering in terms of the street vacation is concerned. Looking at the plans, if a proposal for street vacation is possibly available, in terms of what the Conservancy is trying to accomplish by creating a connection on or next to Marywood or on Marywood from the Wildlife Corridor to Stanley Drive, it seems just on a practical matter that that may be something that can be accomplished. And I want to know to what extent that proposal of street vacation was actually looked into, the timing, and how that could possibly be tied into having the parties agree to a proposal.
We have the street vacation, so I'm sorry.
So those are just general comments that I want to throw out there before public comment gets started. And I would very much suggest if there's any other parties, community members that's interested in looking at alternative proposals, Mr. Avishad, if you have extra copies, please provide them to the numerous people that's actually out here today.
Thank you, Commissioner Volker. We will do that.
Mr. Bouchon, I have several speaker cards for that I believe you placed in a particular order. I believe that one of the aspects that we're probably headed in today is to be able to keep this matter open for public comments at a later date. I don't know if your clients want to speak on the matter today or after everyone here has had an opportunity to review all the proposals before us and be guided by your counsel to them as to what it is that they're looking at when they return. I can give them an opportunity to speak here today if they wish it, or they can have an opportunity to speak at a later date at a future meeting if that is the direction that this body heads in, after they've had an opportunity to review all of the proposals and hopefully participate through you in some of the discussions with the different parties on the table. Yes, please.
While the 30 seconds are going on, if it's possible, could I have someone from the Conservancy who seems to be here come forward from you?
Welcome.
I apologize, President Acevedo, again for just to schedule. Could you provide a speaker card to? Yes. Could you please
Eric Bruin, Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, 5750 Ramirez Canyon Road, Malibu, 90265.
Thank you very much. I'm not an expert on conservation or wildlife. Just on a practical matter, looking at the proposal that Ms. White had, and also looking at your proposal that was provided to us today, and this detailed exhibit, from what it looks like, the corridor essentially has to go next to Marywood Drive through the property. One of the alternatives that's being, and I'm assuming that the purpose of that corridor connecting through Marywood is to provide a connection from Stanley towards the back.
Correct.
So the question becomes if it's in the form of a street vacation or in the form of going through an easement partially on the land. Does it have any significance, or is there any big difference to that?
It does. When Paul went out to the site, he was very adamant that it had to be not on paper street for a number of reasons. When we look for wildlife corridors, we look for a couple of characteristics. The first thing is continuity. If it doesn't go where you're trying to go, it doesn't accomplish anything. The second thing is favorable topography, and because of the way Marywood is configured, there is actually a fairly steep slope from the paper street to the upper part of the easement. And so, in Paul's opinion, it is inferior to the point where it would become a significant impact.
Would it be possible possibly going through grading or different type of topography resolutions to try to make that accommodating?
I don't feel like I can answer that tonight because Paul is more qualified to do that. I would say that in general we try to minimize A, grading, and B, vegetation removal to the extent possible. So if there are trees or any of the other kind of native habitat on the site, we would not want to remove it.
And absolutely no disrespect to the state agency as far I'm in line with what the planning department says in terms of diverting any type of authority to a different agency. I believe the city attorney as far as their analysis was correct. So essentially what I'm trying to do is see if we can try to get something worked out between Conservancy, the appellants, as well as the applicants to try to find some type of resolution to this. If you could work with us, look at the 5 proposals, and see if there's anything that can be done to accommodate all parties as much as possible.
Thank you.
Mr. Duchamp?
For the record, Mr. Duchamp, in consulting with the representatives of my client, what we would suggest is that you allow at least the following 4 people here to speak for perhaps 2 minutes instead of 1, just because they've obviously been here since 4:30, and I mean, there might be a 5th. I don't want to foreclose anyone. Most of the people that are here obviously aren't familiar. The ones that I would ask you to hear from in this order would be Peter Lawson, immediate neighbor, Ali Samard, Leslie Mansour, and I think Nick Zappos. And Randy Dodge. Yes, reading a letter from Tom Pulse, who could not be here. If we could have those 5 people perhaps just speak 2-minute max, then we I think understand the direction you're going in, and we welcome that opportunity to further review it.
Great.
Thank you. Mr. Lawson? Welcome. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, members of the Commission. My name is Peter Lawson. My wife, Joanna, and I live at 8409 Windham Road. That is a property with contiguous boundary to the lot of the developer known as 2244. And we have a lengthy contiguous boundary with the Marywood right-of-way. For point of clarification, Marywood Drive in this portion of the hills is totally unimproved. It is not a dirt road. It is a steep hillside with chaparral and other vegetation. I would like to welcome the thought that as we have learned some of this for the first time, that there may be some alternative proposals, and that all the parties work together to try to find something that will satisfy everyone. I would like to clarify a point of concern that a number of neighbors, not only myself, but other neighbors on Stanley Hills Drive below the development, we have contiguous boundaries with the Marywood Drive right-of-way, and that would therefore place an economic burden and a consideration that we need to consider if an individual, in this case the developer, is allowed to have a portion of that right-of-way vacated for the purpose of meeting perhaps a compromised or realigned right-of-way conservancy way, that leaves the potential of Marywood being landlocked for any other future development or use. So I think that would be an unjust and improper encumbrance on other landowners. And so I think that consideration should be taken into account when a compromise is looked into. And other than that, I do also want to state my support of a number of the points that had been brought up in the booklet that you have received and reviewed in regards to the overall need and the appropriateness of having a what I would term a healthy wildlife corridor for our neighbors. There are many, many animals in our area. They do use this. They are an important part of the life that we all live in Laurel Canyon, and it's something that makes Los Angeles so special. So I think we would all join together in recognizing that importance, and I thank you for your consideration.
Hi, my name is Allison Samard, and I live at 2226 Stanley Hills Drive. I'm just uphill from the property in question. We neighbors didn't appeal the original ZAD as it included Condition 19. The developer could have appealed it and didn't. For 8 years, we have witnessed the developer show general disregard for rules, cutting down a 100-year-old oak tree on a Saturday when we couldn't call the authorities, cutting the street without insurance, and most recently pulling a permit before fulfilling Condition 19. The developers refused to follow process where we neighbors have respected rules, and we understand the purpose of these conditions are to protect the land and its community. When an applicant agrees to a condition, the city shouldn't let him off the hook. We are not trying to stop this development. That is why we had a private agreement in place with conditions to protect the land in which we live, to protect the wildlife corridor. I'd like to note that when that building fence went up in January, the wildlife corridor itself was blocked. The animals have stopped. We've had a lot of neighbors witness confused animals on Stanley Hills Drive. I had $1,500 in humane animal removal from under my house when they couldn't find their way home. If the appeal is granted, and we do hope that you will do this, all this developer needs to do, this is a business transaction for him, is revise his plans. He'll still get his 3 homes and his 3 lots and honor the condition. The corridor through the living room is a misrepresentation. We're talking about 5 feet shaved off the corner of a 4,000 square foot home. This is not economic hardship for him. This is just honoring, a small reduction in his return on investment on a business investment. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much.
Yes, well, my name is Leslie Mansour, and I live at 2062 Stanley Hills Drive. C.A. Sue Chang's letter of determination for this case became effective July 31st, 2009. The city acted, and the applicant did not appeal this determination or any of its conditions until now. That is because this applicant does not follow procedure. Exhibit 11 in the booklet shows that 6 months after the ZA determination became effective, the applicant contacted Lynn Wyatt, not the ZA who acted on the case. In his letter, he thanks Lynn Wyatt for her, quote, preferential attention. 6 months after that, Lynn Wyatt wrote her clarification. Her action does not clarify, it changes. One way the clarification changes the agreement in favor of the applicant is that the applicant now has merely to file a request for a vacation of Marywood Drive in order to be issued all permits and sign-offs. His request doesn't have to be granted, only filed. How can this community trust that this applicant will follow procedure? Exhibit 9 shows a record of the applicant's court cases of contract fraud and breaches of agreement. He has repeatedly demonstrated his intentions to thwart or bypass codes, processes, and agreements. Under these circumstances, allowing this so-called clarification, which stands to benefit no one but the applicant, can only raise doubts about the fairness of this process.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Nick Zeppos, and I live at 2160 Stanley Hills Drive. I live right next door to the land in question. As a member of the Stanley Hills Drive community, I urge you to vote in favor of our appeal. The wildlife corridor, as established by the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, represents the last vital connection between two natural areas in the city. The wildlife corridor has been blocked by fences since December, when building and safety first allowed for permits without upholding the wildlife corridor condition. As a result, the animals are trying to work around the building fences where it is normally their thoroughfare. I've spent hundreds of dollars in animal removal of several skunks, possums, raccoons from burrowing under my home for the first time in the 9 years I have owned my home. This started a few weeks after the building fences went up and blocked the very wildlife corridor the developer had agreed to preserve. This is more evidence that the wildlife corridor is not a whimsy, but an important inclusion in the plans. This three-ring circus to shirk his responsibilities by misleading the ZA is part of the regular routine of a developer who has shown intent to ignore previous commitments and agreements, furthering plans to disrespect the neighbors and the environment in which he plans to profit. Thank you.
My name is Randy Dodge. I live 2175 Stanley Hills Drive. I'm reading a letter that's written by Tom Hulse, who lives across the street from the property. He couldn't make it. My name is Tom Hulse. I have lived in the neighborhood on Stanley Hills Drive across from the proposed development for 23 years. Because of the truly unique nature of our area and the fact that the Stanley Hills Drive is a substandard street, both too narrow and too steep, I was relieved and gratified when we were able to enter into an agreement to support Mr. Attia's 3-house development, reduced from 5 houses. It meant that in return for the neighbors supporting the 3 houses, he would agree to the most crucial element we wanted, to protect a wildlife corridor that would allow for the continued movement of the wildlife through the only open space available on his side of Stanley Hills Drive, a corridor the wildlife had been using for almost 2 decades I have lived here, even though he would build 3 houses where there had been only 1. We made an agreement on both sides for this corridor, and he did so freely, and we all voluntarily gave the oversight of the corridor to the expertise of the SMMC. I know that without this condition, I would have never supported our agreement, and feel sure that the others here in this room would say the same. We know that in 2008, 1 year before our agreement became legally binding, and also 1 year before the city made their agreement with the developer, the SMMC offered their recommendation for the corridor, which has remained consistent throughout this whole process, save for the efforts on the part of the SMMC to compromise. We all had access to the SMMC's recommendation. The city, the developer, and the neighbors, and the 2 agreements were entered into in the summer of 2009. Here we are in the fall of 2011. The development having either mistakenly or fraudulently pulled permits in the fall of 2010, permits which the city rightfully stopped, and the ZA is now making a proposal that pulls the rug out from under our agreement to support the development, and offers a solution that is not workable, not for the neighbors, not for the Conservancy, not for the actual movement of the wildlife. The one thing that changes the ZA why it may do achieve, it takes a significant part of the corridor off of the developer's property and potentially dumps it down onto a paper street a few feet from the house of the nearest neighbor. What is especially of concern is the developer offered to the ZA a proposed number 5, which is Exhibit 2, identified as the best for all, and the ZA chose to remove more than 40 feet from that proposal that satisfied all involved. I urge this commission to grant our appeal and to help us find a solution that is responsive to all parties. Your efforts are most respectfully appreciated, Tom Hulse.
Thank you very much. Sir, your name is Randy Dodge.
Randy Dodge, and I live on Stanley Hills also, and I've seen many deer across them.
You can go back to seat. Thank you very much.
I'm also on the list.
Yeah, hold on one second. cards for the appeal. Mr. Bouchon, I have several other speaker cards, so I just want to make sure that I'm not skipping over someone that may not be represented by your group of concerned residents. Wade Wolbert.
I agree with what
Thank you. Leanne Munson.